Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Jeanette, Garretty, Chief Economist at Robertson Wealth Management, to discuss bigger picture that the country must confront no matter who is elected, and it's a labor force productivity growth question. Jeanette, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
And how challenging is it for businesses to plan for 2021 with lack of policy direction?
Very challenging, and yet they have to do it. Everybody has to plan. The typical cycle is people start that planning process probably in July or August. Can you imagine doing that this last July and August? You're thinking about 2021. And you start to finalize things now. And I think it's not surprising why we're starting to see some really significant layoff announcements now, because people are saying, what do I really want to plan for in 2021? You usually will start to see the actions reflecting those plans in the fourth quarter and then going on into the first. People want to start, businesses always want to start the next year with sort of a clean slate on what they're going to do, and they'll take actions to get there right now.
CEOs and CFOs are expecting rising labor costs, including salary and benefit increases. Do you find it surprising with excess labor supply in the U.S. labor market, especially with additional layoffs to be announced?
Yes, I do. I can understand it, but I think it's a very surprising result. And it's a bit circumstantial evidence and also some surveys that were done in August. And it appears to me that what businesses are sort of planning for is to do more with less, and maybe a lot more with less. And the only way I can really see this increasing labor costs, especially salary and benefits, because that's the message that's being signaled, is that people expect they're going to have to pay for the talent to allow them to do more with less, or they're going to need a different skill set. I would add that there are a lot of reasons to expect labor costs to go up beyond salary and benefits. Just the sheer expense of dealing with PPE and other things for employees to keep your staff safe is expensive.
Going forward, where will the focus on the longer term business model and cost structure be?
It's an interesting question. As recently as August, it didn't seem like businesses were paying a lot of attention to capital spending. And all of a sudden now, in the month of September and in the discussions about October, it appears that the attention is being turned to not so much maybe plant, but more equipment spending designed to sort of get them into this new normal or new environment or whatever you want to call it. So I think the attention is there, and the attention's got to be on productivity. Which is consistent with what the challenge is for the economy as a whole, is getting productivity growth up.
Right, and that's a good point that you make, because for 2020, it seems as if businesses were focused on business continuity and, of course, trying to keep their employees on. But as you had mentioned before, for 2021, they're going to have to right-size the business to fit into this new normal. So with that being said, we got our employment numbers this morning for October 2nd, of course, the September report. That still doesn't include all the major layoffs that were announced this week and those expected to come. So what was your reaction to the numbers this morning?
And you're quite right about that point about layoffs. And you've got to remember that also when companies announce layoffs, there are often costs associated with that. There may be severance costs, there may be other things there. So you get the announcement and the real impact on the labor force. The cost structure is impacted a little bit initially, and then the impact on the labor force has a delay. I thought the numbers were consistent. I think all the numbers this week, there are a lot that came out, were very consistent with a recovery that is continuing to unfold. But this is not a rocket ship to the moon. And I don't think most business people ever expected that. And so what you're seeing is a deceleration in the pace, if you will, of the recovery off of the bottom. That's not surprising. I think the numbers also weren't surprising. The biggest surprise was probably the unemployment rate. But what was not surprising in that was to see that there was some decrease in labor force participation rates. And that's probably how we got, the consensus had been that the unemployment rate would be 8.2%. It came in at 7.9. But it appears that some of that is because people have stopped looking for work. for a variety of reasons.
Right. And Jeanette, just, one more thing to throw at you. My biggest concern is what kinds of jobs are they going to go back to? If you're in the service sector, and it could be another year, 2, 3 years before many of these jobs, if they come back online, come back online. And of course, it's a great place to be if you're in the STEM field, but not everyone has that kind of technological training. How do you transition you're talking about millions of people, transitioning them into a more sustainable field? That just seems like how do you even execute on something like that?
You've nailed it. I mean, actually, if you look at the numbers that have come out now for employment growth, a lot of the rebound is in services, leisure, hospitality, entertainment. But my concern is I think we're going to get stuck here at a certain point with, you can already see the long-term unemployment roles kind of growing. People have identified as being long-term unemployed. And I think that's going to play out in the service sector. If restaurants are closing and brick and mortar retail is closing and all these things are closing, there are issues here in getting those people back into the labor force. This is what I think the Congressional Budget Office in their most recent report was signaling. I said, we have actually a labor force problem here. Something of a mismatch between where this economy is going and where the employment base stands. And yet, overall, we need to have more labor in order to get the higher growth rates that we expect to see now and in the future.
All right, Jeanette, appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.